Hey everyone, welcome to our first virtual session of our notes here. Uh, this is definitely a new experience for me in the 15 years of teaching, and I don't think I've ever thought I would be talking to my own phone while trying to communicate to students, but hey, we're going to give it a shot. I'm going to try not to be too awkward with this, and we'll try to do this the quickest and easiest that we can to get the information out to you guys. So, today, guys, we are going to start with a brand new unit that is going to be on three different presidents: Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe. All three of them will be from Virginia, and all three of them will be a big part of the up and coming Democratic Republican Party, which we talked about last unit. Now, at this point, guys, I'm going to give you an opportunity to pause me here if you need to, in order to get out your PowerPoint and your fill in the blank notes to be able to work along with me as I go through these slides with you, all right? So I'm going to give you an opportunity to pause me right now if you need to. I'll give you a second, all right? Go ahead. All right. Well, welcome back. I hope you have all your materials you need, the PowerPoint and the fill in the blank notes, and we're ready to roll. So here we are, guys, tackling Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. All right, now remember, this unit is going to come right on the heels of John Adams and his, what most people would think would be a failed presidency. He struggled to connect with the American people. He struggled through the XYZ affair and the choice of whether or not to go to war with European powers like Britain and France. And he has also struggled with the American people because of things like the Alien and Sedition Act, where he's threatened their constitutional rights. And so, unlike the election of 1796, this election is going to be kind of up in the air, and it's going to be a question mark of what is actually going to happen here. So why don't we go ahead, guys, and click over to our first slide. So click once, pass beyond the title screen here, and it should bring up an old creepy picture of Thomas Jefferson here, kind of, with his fur-lined coat and everything like that. But this is Thomas Jefferson. Obviously, the leader of the Democratic Republicans. We've talked about him before. He is the author of the Declaration of Independence. He is considered one of the founding fathers. He was also a diplomat to France during the Revolution. So a very experienced guy. And remember, he came in second to John Adams' last election in 1796. So if we go ahead and click onto our next little box here, you'll actually see here, guys, that this election is a rematch, all right? It is an exact same card as the election of 1796. It's going to feature Thomas Jefferson representing the Democratic Republicans versus John Adams, who is representing the Federalist Party. Now, up until this point, Democratic Republicans have been around, but they have not won an election yet. Remember, Washington was the president the first two times. He was considered a Federalist. John Adams will follow up as the third president. So now we get to this election, but this election is going to be a little different. I think most people, the last three elections, had confidence that the Federalists were going to win. I'm not so sure that they're that confident with this election this time around because of things like the Alien Sedition Act and other things that are going on. The people were not necessarily happy with policies of John Adams. Now, I do actually have a little video clip for you here. It's about 4 minutes long. So if you scroll up to where it says the election of 1800, and you can click on that hyperlink, it'll bring up the video for you. I'll pause here and give you guys an opportunity to watch it. Come on back and hear the rest of it once you're done. All right? All right, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the video clip there. Ultimately, the election of 1800 is really one of the first elections where it's a very close election. It was up for grabs, and it was really up for either party to win. If you go ahead and click on the next part of this, Adams by this point is really waning in popularity. Americans are kind of tired of the Federalist message. They're extraordinarily tired of the Alien Sedition Act and their rights being tested by a federal government. You also have to remember that we just fought a revolution against an overreaching government. And so for many Americans, they felt that the Adams administration was just very dangerous and could possibly put them back in a place to sacrifice their rights, which they were not happy with. Other part of this too is it's really a class type of thing. The Federalists really became a symbol of kind of the rich and the kind of powerful people that were running the country. For example, George Washington was a Federalist, but he was a plantation owner. He had lots of land. John Adams came from a very privileged background out of Boston. Ironically enough, though, Thomas Jefferson's just as rich as these other individuals, but for whatever reason, Democratic Republicans don't really get that tag of being kind of the rich, upper class citizens in America. And so a lot of this ends up being unpopularity due to that as well. John Adams, by this point, is really kind of struggling to hold on to a majority and to continue to keep his place as the president. Now, if we click and move forward here, guys, you'll actually see an electoral map come up here. All right, this is actually going to be the breakdown of the election. Now, if we're looking here, we can see that it was not a blowout by any means. Thomas Jefferson is going to secure 73 of the electoral votes, which was roughly 53% of what was available. If you notice, he carried a lot of what have been considered the southern states or the frontier states. So if you notice, he carried a lot of the western parts of states, the places to the left there in green. Okay, places like Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia. He was obviously from Virginia, so he's going to be very popular there. You even have New York and Pennsylvania, which were considered at this time frontier states. And so he is going to carry more of the rural people, the farmers, the people living out west in these areas. You'll see that John Adams is going to dominate the coastal areas. Big cities entirely went for John Adams. New York City, Boston, Philadelphia. Yet again, part of that was this kind of class issues that were going on in America at the time. You really have the rich kind of aristocrats from the cities squaring off against the farmers of the western areas of the United States and kind of the southern areas. Thomas Jefferson really ends up collecting a lot of the vote of those rural areas and the farming areas, and obviously John Adams will crush it in the city areas. With that said, though, ultimately it is not a blowout. Okay, John Adams will dominate those areas. Jefferson will dominate those areas. You can see everything was pretty well split. And so it ends up being a 73 electoral vote to 65 for the Democratic Republican Party. And so it is a victory for the Democrats. And this is significant, guys. This is the first time in America changes power. We went from a federalist government for the last 3 terms. 3 presidents in a row were Federalists. Now all of a sudden you're flipping it to the Democratic Republicans. And this doesn't seem like a huge deal, but this is significant. And it's significant because they change power without violence. So take a look at, say, the French Revolution as example. French Revolution, they changed power 3-4 times. And every time there's murder in the streets, there's chaos, there's guillotines, there's people losing their heads, people are going nuts. And so the Americans, what is significant about this is that we change power from the Federalists to the Democratic Republicans. And yeah, people were bummed, people were angry, but they don't go about murdering each other in the streets. There's not a revolution, there's not a civil war. Yet again, people may not have been happy about it, but they still stood together as a nation, at least for now. And that's going to be significant because this showed that American democracy could work. This crazy idea of giving the people the power to ultimately choose their rulers was a huge deal. And we kind of proved that, hey, this could work. As crazy as Europeans thought we were for trying this little experiment, it was working out for us. All right? And so, that is a positive for us. If we click forward here, I believe it goes into some more details. Now, another interesting thing here is if we look at this chart, how it worked at the time was, remember, each of the candidates was actually running relatively independently. So each elector actually had 2 votes. They would cast one vote for who they wanted to be the president. They would cast one vote for who they wanted to be the vice president. The idea being, guy who comes in first wins, guy who comes in second becomes the vice president. We've talked a little bit about that in the past. Take a look at this chart. They actually screw up here. So the Democratic Republicans had this plan where they wanted to basically stack the votes in their favor to make sure that their two guys got elected. In this case, Thomas Jefferson in first and Aaron Burr in second. The plan was one of the electors was actually supposed to change his vote. So he was supposed to vote for, I guess, Jefferson twice or vice versa. The idea would be Jefferson would get 74 votes, Burr would get 72. That way they would ensure Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr would be the two representatives. They actually screw up, though, and the guy forgets to change his ballot. So take a look at our totals here, and if you notice, Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson are tied, all right? And so ultimately, everybody here is like, oh my, all right? So President and Aaron Burr win, but this raises the question, guys, who is going to be the president? And guys, that president is what you're filling in on your fill-in sheet. Sorry, I forgot to keep mentioning those as we've moved through. Also on this page, you want to make sure you're filling in the Constitution says one must win a majority, all right? 51% of the electoral votes to become president. So in this case, they now have a question. They now have to test out this brand new Constitution of, oh crap, what do? We have a tie. And we never really thought what we would do with a tie. And so they actually have to go back to the Constitution and kind of read it over and try to figure out where exactly do they go. Now, as it says here, guys, the plan yet again was for one elector to hold a vote back from Burr, effectively giving him 72, and Jefferson will get the clear majority of a 73. But ultimately, obviously, that plan backfires, and the Democratic Republicans are kind of stuck. So they go back and look at the Constitution. Oh, sorry, on that box, you're filling in elector in your first blank, and then you're filling in 72 as your second blank, according to my PowerPoint here. Anyway, so what actually happens if you read into the Constitution, if we end up with an electoral tie, which doesn't happen often, it actually goes to the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives will sit down and debate, and they will then decide who will be the president. So you're filling in that box, the House, okay, is the blank you're filling in there. And realize that even though this could have been bad, they could have chosen Aaron Burr if he had more of a following or something like that. But in this case, Thomas Jefferson really was the clear leader of the party. And he will get that one vote and become the president of the United States. Aaron Burr will become his vice president. Interesting enough, yet again, we've talked about Aaron Burr in the past. He is the dude that shot Alexander Hamilton because Hamilton does not give him support for when he's running for president. That does not happen for another, let's see, this is 1800, so that would not going to happen for another like 6 or 7 years, I believe. Aaron Burr is actually running for president after Jefferson is stepping down, and that's when the conflict takes place. But that is the same guy. Aaron Burr here as the vice president is also the same guy that kills Alexander Hamilton in a duel. So that's kind of a crazy piece of little trivia there. You don't usually hear about vice presidents murdering people, but in this case he did. All right, so we're going to click onto our last box here for this page, and as it says, it brings up, now, as a result of this, Thomas Jefferson and his government realized that probably should change this, that ultimately this whole voting for president and vice president in the same election on different ballots was way too complicated and left way too many issues and possibilities for problems. In this case, they obviously had the one elector who didn't do his job and vote the right way. And so at this point, they decide to pass the 12th Amendment. And the 12th Amendment is, I believe, the first blank you're filling in there for this box. And the 12th Amendment, guys, very clearly says that essentially a president will be and vice president will now be elected on separate ballots. So there is no more ties. Essentially, there is no more deciding within Congress for this particular issue anyway. They decide essentially to vote on the president and vice president separately, which means the vice president is running as the vice president from the beginning, and the president is running for the president in the beginning. There is no this guy running in general and deciding who's going to be in place. This is still generally how we do it, guys. When a president is deciding to run for the presidency, they will choose their running mate, which means their vice president. And when we vote as citizens, we not only vote for who we might be the president, we are also voting for who might be the vice president as well. It becomes a package deal with the 12th Amendment. All right, and so your blanks on that last box were 12th Amendment, and then ballots was your second blank for that box. With that being said, I think that's going to be where we leave off for today. Sorry, actually, if you want to go back, I apologize. There was actually a video clip on the last slide that for the 12th Amendment. So if you actually want to check that out, it's about 3 or 4 minutes long. It's nothing too crazy. It kind of explains what is included in the 12th Amendment and why they came up with it. But either way, check that out. And then I'll be coming back at you with you guys, another set of notes later in the week. I hope this was easy enough to follow. I hope I spoke slow enough and gave you guys some time to kind of go through those video clips and stuff like that. If there's anything else I could do to make this easier, hit me up on the comments in Classroom. Let me know if you need me to speak slower or clarify anything, if you have any questions. All right. Have a great day, guys. Be well, and I'll talk to you soon. Later. Bye.